Hi, Quadcopter 101 here. What I got for you today is a review of the Cheerson CX10 Nano Quadcopter. At about $16, the Cheerson CX10 is one of the cheapest of the quadcopters that you'll be able to find, but don't be fooled by that low price. This little CX10 is a very maneuverable quadcopter, very nice performer, even with this little tiny controller. So that's what I'd like to talk about today, is this little quadcopter. Let's review it overall, its general shape. It's just a very basic looking quadcopter. There's nothing special about it. It has a little on-off switch, a little charging port for its battery. Notice that its battery is encased within the quadcopter itself, which means you can't replace the batteries between flights on this. But for most nanocopters, you can't do that anyways. They're all more or less have this encased battery. The only reason I can think of that they do this is that they want to give the motors a chance to cool down, these very tiny motors on these nano quadcopters. So in effect, all you can do is one flight, then you have to recharge the quadcopter again before your next flight. And again, I think they want to give time for these motors to cool down. Another thing about the little quadcopter, the range with its transmitters, and this is true for most of these nano quadcopters, is very limited. You usually only get about 30 to 50 meters range, which means this is good for flying indoors mainly, in small backyards and in tiny parks, such as one I'm at right now. I'm going to demonstrate it today. This does have some ability to fly in the wind because you can select the higher rate modes. So it is a potentially good outdoor flyer. There are some nano quadcopters that you just don't want to take outdoors. So this one you can. So let's go over a review of the controller now. The controller is very basic, tiny. The idea being, I believe, that they wanted you to be able to put both of these in your coat pocket and go down to your local park to fly. But on the controller itself, you notice that there's no trigger buttons that you normally see on these controllers. The way that they do this is that the trigger buttons have been actually incorporated into the control sticks themselves, with the intent being this left control stick. When you press it one time, you can go from low rate to medium rate to high rate mode, which increases the speed of the quadcopter itself. And the right control stick, when you press it, selects the ability to do flips on the quadcopter. You press it once, you'll hear a beep, and then you can tell the quadcopter which direction you want to flip. You also have a trim button for the right control stick pitch, and a trim button for roll. There is no trim button for yaw or throttle on this quadcopter. And you don't really need that these days, especially with 6-axis quadcopters. That's why you tend to see them less and less on control pads of most quadcopters these days. Okay, let's do a demonstration flight and see how this performs. There were a couple things I forgot to mention. You should keep in mind that the CX10 is mainly intended as an indoor flyer, but it can be flown outdoors if you keep in mind and consider several things. First off, again, the limited range of this transmitter, it only gives you about 30 meters range. You don't want to fly it across the football field. It's not going to happen. But if you keep it in a small, I fell in a hole there. If you keep it in a small park or your backyard, it's a good flyer for such cases. The second thing to consider is, as it is designed for indoor flight mainly, the flight controller software isn't very good at encountering wind. What can happen is, and will happen, if you're outside and you get a gentle breeze coming along, in your attempts to fight that breeze, the accelerometers can pick up a drift, and you'll notice that the quadcopter may start to drift in a certain direction. That's to be expected, okay, but it can be easily fixed. If you start to notice it picking up a drift, just land the quadcopter on the ground and let it sit undisturbed for a few seconds for the accelerometers to reset themselves. It's very simple to do. Again, if you notice a drift starting to build in on your quadcopter, an uncommanded drift, it gets harder and harder to counter that drift, just land the quadcopter and let it sit for a few seconds. Okay, we're going to go for a flight again. I got a breeze coming from my back here. you'll probably see that drift, and you'll see what I have to do to counter that drift. So let's give it a flight and see how the CX10 performs outdoors in a gentle breeze. Okay, quadcopter's been bound. I do have a breeze here, so I'm going to go to, let's see, let's go right to high. You heard those 3 beeps? Again, went to high rate by pressing the throttle and yaw controller downward, and I pressed it twice to get the 3 beeps. It's now in high rate mode, and I'm going to hand toss it. And now I wanted to show you one thing. This little CX10 can do funnels very well. And also by doing these funnels, that kind of counters the accelerometers getting weird inputs. You know, that drift. So if you do funnels every once in a while, that can actually counter the drift. But it does excellent funnels. And it's a very maneuverable little quadcopter, as you can see here. Great indoor flyer, but also outdoor, if you keep in mind that its accelerometers may pick up a drift if there's a wind. And the way to counter that is to either do funnels, and it's not hard to do funnels. Forward pitch, full left turn, rudder, or forward pitch, full right rudder, and you're doing funnels. The CX10. Now notice I haven't had to counter that drift yet. If I just fly around like this, let's see if I can show you what happens with that drift if I actually encounter it. The wind seems to have stopped. Now have I shown you flips? This does flips very well. The CX10. You press down the right stick and tell it which direction to flip by pushing right or back. Now, doing flips kills battery, so I'm not going to do very many of those, but it does flips, as you can see. I'm going to have some power to fly around. But again, this is great backyard flyer, great small park flyer, or an indoor flyer. I don't like to fly indoors because indoors is boring to me. But if you take it outdoors, you can have some fun with it. And again, keep in mind your range in this is not very large, so keep it close. And it's going out of range there. So that's the CX10. Cheerson CX10, great indoor flyer, but also, as many people have shown videos, but it's also a great outdoor flyer too. So, hope you enjoyed this review. Quadcopter 101, signing out. Bye.